Welcome to the 10x Mindshift session 3, where we have somebody who understands the pulse of India, that is being an entrepreneur. And he is the president of Mysuru. Welcome, Mr. Bhaskar Kalale, to our session.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, Dr. Chirag.
Thank you. So, Bhaskar, today we have an amazing theme for us to discuss, and it's quite impactful, quite, I would say, new. Teachers being entrepreneurs.
Right.
So, before we dive deep into this area, I want you to tell us that why you think this entrepreneurial mindset is a requirement in the classroom.
So, you mentioned that today's topic is teachers and being an entrepreneurs or how they have to think, right? So, if you look at who a teacher is, let's define who a teacher is and let's define who an entrepreneur is. Then we'll try to mix them together and see if it gels well together. A teacher, in my opinion, is somebody who prepares the students for future, right? They are using the tools that are available today to prepare the students to live a life in the future, right? So that's a big mind shift change or mind change itself for people, for everybody, just not teachers, even as parents, right? So we are trying to bring our kids up in an era which is very different from the era that we grew up in, right? So same thing goes for teachers. Teachers are teaching the students and preparing them for the future, which is unknown, right? So which is uncertain, therefore, and very complex, obviously. And if you look at and it's ambiguous as well. So I can literally say that a teacher is working in a VUCA environment, right? So that's the vulnerability, uncertainty, complex world, and also lots of ambiguity. If you look at an entrepreneur also looks at the same environment. They are looking at the future and trying to build something today that will help the consumers tomorrow, right? So from that perspective, a teacher and the entrepreneurs have to have the same traits, same mindset, have the same thought process to say, what does future look like? Or what do I think the future is going to look like, and therefore prepare for today. So in the case of an entrepreneur, they could be building a product, they could be building a company, whereas in the case of a teacher, they're building a student. They're building a product. For them, student is the product.
Correct.
Right? So, therefore, I believe the mindset a teacher should have is that of an entrepreneur, and same thing goes for entrepreneurs as well. They have to have the mindset of a teacher because they are building something that is for the future. They need to take the team along, they need to take the investors along, and they also show a picture of to the consumers as to why their product or services is going to be useful for them in the future.
Right. So can I say an entrepreneur always hunts for a problem, and the moment they have a problem, they don't wait for the instructions, they solve it. So same thing like I see in my classroom is when I see a student who is disengaged, I don't wait for the curriculum to change, I simply change my strategy, my approach.
Correct. So I wouldn't say an entrepreneur is hunting for a problem to be solved. I think it's an innate curiosity that people have, entrepreneurs have, right? They're constantly looking for opportunities. They're not hunting, so as to speak. They see it everywhere, right? And I think the teachers also need to have the same mindset. Because just like there may be 100 opportunities for an entrepreneur, they have to decide which opportunity to pick and run with it, right? Same thing, there are 10 students in a class, right? The teacher has to decide which student has what level of understanding of the subject, who has a mindset of having a sense of curiosity. I actually call it an intellectual sense of curiosity. It's just not the curiosity, but there has to be an intellectual aspect to it. And the teacher has to nurture it.
Okay.
Right? And therefore, the looking for the product for an entrepreneur, and the teacher is going to identify those traits in a student and convert that into a product.
Lovely. So now coming back to the entrepreneur, what are the 3 most essential characteristics an entrepreneur must have, and the teacher should also develop those 3?
It's hard to pinpoint only three, Chirag, to be honest with you, because there are so many things that make up an entrepreneur. But I think one of the top things that I've already talked about is about the curiosity. You have to have the curiosity. Without curiosity, you cannot find a problem and then come up with a solution. Finding a solution, I think, is very easy. It's the finding the problem that is difficult, right? The finding a problem that is crying for a solution. There are a lot of issues, right? There are a lot of problems in the world, but not every problem needs to be solved, right? There are some problems that you can just let it go, right? So therefore, I think the sense of curiosity is very, very important for an entrepreneur. The second one is perseverance, right? Once you have decided that I'm going to solve this problem, then you have to have that mindset to say, I'm going to pursue it with all my heart and soul, right? But at the same time, the converse is also true. At some point in time, if you believe that this is not the right solution, right, or I picked the wrong problem, you have to have, you should have no ego to say, okay, I made a mistake, let me go back.
True, true.
Right? So, so those are the two top ones that is a curiosity, perseverance, and the third one, of course, is ability to collaborate with people. Is very, very important. Whether it is your team members, to take the entire team together is very critical. And in fact, I was telling somebody the other day, somebody was saying, what are the three attributes for a startup to be successful? I know we are talking about entrepreneurs, but for any startup to be successful, I said, I look at it as 3 T's, the letter T. Team, technology, and the timing is the third one. If you get the team right, and if you have the timing of your product right, and if you get the right technology, I think you got a successful startup. So I think the entrepreneur has to have that visibility and the ability to determine and recognize that the three of them need to come together.
Exactly.
Right?
It has to
and
be
I think,
cohesive.
Sorry?
They have to be cohesive together.
They have to be cohesive. They have to go hand in hand. And I think the same thing goes for teachers as well. They have to recognize what's happening in the classroom. You as a teacher cannot get ahead of yourselves. Why? Because the students are still very delicate minds, right? And you have to nurture it. And just the way entrepreneurs nurture an idea, and here they're actually nurturing a human being, right? That I think is a big deal, because these are formative years for students.
Yes.
Right? So, and if a teacher can inculcate some of these characteristics of being an entrepreneur at a very early age, I think it's going to stay with the students for the rest of their lives.
And while thinking and while listening to you said that accepting failure is quite important.
Correct.
Because see, when you are vulnerable, you open many opportunities, right? And when students see you that, okay, you're also vulnerable, they also develop that trait that, hey, failing in life is okay.
Correct. Correct.
And something that you said, curiosity, it reminds me of this famous saying that say curiosity kills the cat, but that actually allows it to explore 9 lives that she has.
Correct. Exactly.
So yes, curiosity is quite important, guys. Please remember that. And it lets you fail, but it also lets you explore and grow in life.
Absolutely right. I mean, curiosity, otherwise you become a dead wood.
True.
Right? I mean, the humans are the only species to whom the God has given brains. Yeah. The brains that can think, that can analyze. Right?
Exactly.
And if you are not making use of that, what use of you being a human being? Right?
Right. So then comes our next question.
Yes.
We know being entrepreneur is not an easy job. It's not an easy task at all. In the business world, we are trying to grow entrepreneurs in the field of education. What challenges you anticipate for the teachers and for the organizations who want to get into this area?
I would actually expand a little bit, Chirag, if you will, because there are 3 players in this whole thing. One is obviously the organization of the school. The second one is the teacher. Actually, maybe 4. The third one is the student, and the fourth one are the parents.
Yeah.
Right? And all of them are actually working in an environment, right, which is being created by us ourselves, other than the students. If you look at the organization, the teacher and the parents, etc., they all pretty much have similar outlook towards life. And we are trying to prepare the student for the future. And I think the biggest challenge is how do we keep the curiosity of our students alive, right? And I go back and look at how, let's say, a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old kid behaves. They are so full of questions. They're constantly asking you questions, and they ask you questions because they want to learn. They can't read yet.
True.
Right? And whatever they listen, their attention span is very, very small. They can't sit there and listen to somebody giving them a long lecture. So the only medium for a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old is to ask questions and learn. Right? And we call them as terrible twos. Right? But as they grow over a period of time, that curiosity and ability to ask questions dies.
Very true.
Right? We seem to put ourselves, meaning as kids, ourselves surrounded by a shell, and we start feeling that asking a question is wrong. And I think to a large extent, the parents and the school is responsible for it, because we don't allow them to ask questions. So our culture, and I'm not berating our Indian culture by any stretch of the imagination, but if you look at it, it's an instruction-based upbringing. Right? You say, Bhaskar, do this. Bhaskar, don't do this. Chirag, can't climb there. Don't go out of the door. It is always task and instruction-based, upbringing. And that same mindset comes into the classroom. So now what happens is the students are expecting to be told what is to be done. And I think that kills the curiosity, because they are constantly looking up to their teacher to do what the next thing is to be done. They are not allowed to experiment. So curiosity, if you are curious about something, you got to be able to experiment and see how that curiosity pans out. Right? Therefore, the organization got to promote the students to ask questions. They have to create an environment where even the teachers allow the students to ask questions without getting subdued by saying they are questioning me. They're not questioning you. They want to ask. They want to learn. Right? So I think that kind of an environment can be created by the organization, but they also have to have the system to hire the kind of teachers who are open-minded, who will learn newer ways of teaching, so as to speak. And I don't like the word teacher, they are more facilitators.
Okay.
Right? They are not instructors. In my mind, they are enablers. They are coordinators. They are coordinating 1,000 different things to inculcate certain values. It's just not about curriculum. It's about how do you make them ethically and morally upright citizens, and so on. So I think organization has a great role to play in creating that right environment, and then also to be able to hire the right teachers and allow them the space to experiment themselves, and only then the students will also experiment.
Great. So that's quite insightful. The reason is, I also feel that the organizations have to be enablers and not enforcers.
Correct.
So then again, a question for you. Do you see any such school in Karnataka? Do you see any such teacher who is an entrepreneur?
I haven't seen any, right? So I have seen schools that have great entrepreneurial programs, right? So one exists right here in Mysore. I don't have enough visibility to say whether I have seen enough teachers who are entrepreneurial in nature. It's an innate ability, so that's why I also say that teachers also have come from the same environment where we all have come from, right? They have also been taught, and they also learnt in the environment where it's instruction based, it's content based. So for somebody to take a leap from a content based curriculum, that is what let's say we learned, and now I suddenly become a teacher, I'm expected to think and work at a much different level, which is a concept based, and trying to inculcate certain attributes or behavior is not easy, right? And as I said, I have not seen anything in Karnataka, but I believe there are now some colleges also trying to take in students on certificate programs, for example, 9th and 10th. In fact, just 3 days ago, I came to know that BITS Pilani, for example, has a program for 9th and 10th graders. Yes. It's a 2-month certificate program in entrepreneurship. True. I think it's a great initiative. It's a fantastic initiative that just like what Indus is trying to do through the 10X International School, you are trying to catch them young. Yes. Right? Not everybody is going to be an entrepreneur. Let's be honest about it, right? But the fact is, the skills that they develop while learning to be an entrepreneur is going to stand them in very, very good position even when they are working for somebody else.
Exactly. So at least have one bold student, one at a time, every year.
Correct, correct. And just like success of startups, you're going to have even the students in that way are nothing but startups, right? So they are a work in progress.
Exactly.
Some of them will be successful, some of them will not be. But again, going back to the comment that you made earlier, that failure should be an option.
Exactly.
Right? It should always be an option. But I also believe that there also has to be an element of fear. Right? A fear of failure has to be there. A lot of people say that entrepreneurs should not have fear of failure. I said you should have fear of failure. Or you should have a fear of something. That is what will keep you pushing. Whether you are an entrepreneur or not, a fear of something is the one that will keep making you do things better and better and better. It could be fear of losing your job. It could be fear of losing out on money. It could be fear of, at least for me, it's a fear of letting people down around me, right? That keeps pushing me all the time. So people have to have fear of failure, and failure should be an option.
Very well said. Now, the question is not about the organizations or the people involved into it. Now, the question is regarding the system. When we think of teachers being entrepreneurs, trust me, they are all disruptors.
Correct.
They don't follow the line. They make their own path. Is the system ready to have such disruptors? Will the society accept them as teachers? As you said, the facilitators.
See, there are two types of, if you are talking about disruptors, right? So I'm thinking that you are also referring to startups being disruptors, right? I don't believe every startup has to be disruptive, right? There are a lot of things that you can pick that is not working right now. It doesn't mean that you're disrupting the equilibrium that exists in the society. You pick up something and you say, look, there is a better way to do this, right? You're not changing the way it is done, but you're just making it better.
Okay.
Right? It could be as simple as, let's say, there's a process, you do a process optimization. You are not disrupting the process, right? You are making the process better. You are optimizing the process, right? So, so I don't consider teachers to be disruptors from that point of view, and they are actually trying to build upon the characteristics of a student. Right? So, that I don't see teachers to be disruptors.
But in order to break the status quo that we have right now, that we are just preparing for the exams, we are not preparing for life.
Correct.
In that case, my teacher has to be a disruptor.
Correct. That is when I think the organizations play a big role. That is when I said parents are an important part of that whole system. Because students are too young to make any decisions on their own. Right? It's the parents who make the decision for the kids. Right? It's the parents who say, Chirag, you should attend this school. Chirag, you should take these subjects. Bhaskar, you should go into engineering, or you should go to medicine, or you should go here. It's the parents who are dictating these. So I think for the whole system to be successful, the parents have to be an equal partner.
Okay.
Right? And then there will be an acceptance. The biggest challenge today that we have in India, I mean, it's been there for a long time, as long as, even when I was working, right, or studying rather. The biggest challenge is our focus is still on getting a pay package.
Yeah.
Right? The moment, if you are doing an engineering or if you are doing any graduate program, by the time you get into this third year, you start looking for a job. Right? And there is a social pressure. Right? Everybody start to ask you and your parents, did he or she get your job yet?
True.
Right? And what was the package like? That mindset has to be changed. Therefore, the parents have to be involved. Parents have to be involved to say, it's okay if my son or a daughter is not going after a pay package, but pursuing something that they love. They are pursuing their passion.
Exactly.
People have to, parents, when I say people, it's the parents, they have to recognize and understand and inculcate saying, if you are passionately working towards something that you love, you will be successful. There is nothing in this world that can stop you from being successful. On the other side, if I am forced into a situation which I don't like, right, I will remain where I am for the rest of my life. So the parents have to decide what do they want for their kids. Do they want them to be happy and pursue their passion, or do they want to pursue parents' passion and be unhappy for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think sadly it's the later part.
Yes.
Right. So then let me ask you a very simple question, Bhaskar. As a teacher and as a parent, I have raised teenagers, not just my own, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
So what's more difficult, raising capital or raising teenagers?
Oh, hands down teenagers. So there is no, for the beginning, for the starters, you don't have to deal with girlfriends, right? So in the case of entrepreneurs, but in the case of teenagers, you have to look at mood swings, for example, and they are also going through changes.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And entrepreneurship is, will probably last for about maybe 3, 4, 5 years in terms of either it will make it or break it. The teenagers, it starts from 13 and goes on till 19. So it's a much longer runway that you have to deal with. And then there are a lot of emotional ups and downs for the parents and for the son or a daughter as well. And I go back to again what I said in the beginning. We as parents are trying to bring up our kids in an era which is very different from the era that we grew up in, right? So this era is unknown to us, right? We don't know what this era. Gen Z, we don't know nothing about Gen Z, right? And so therefore, I am trying to bring up or inculcate certain values in my kids by the way I was, brought up, which is 40, 50, 60 years ago. It doesn't work because the world has changed. World has changed, the world that they are living in is different. So I cannot take my upbringing as a template and apply it in today's world and say this is how it should work. We got to adapt and have some boundaries, have some framework. So I would say bringing up teenagers is a lot more difficult.
Okay. So, but I agree with you when you say that it's not just for the teachers to be entrepreneurial. The parents also have to change their mind.
Correct.
They too have to be entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Right. Now,
they don't have, sorry to cut you off. They don't have to be entrepreneurial. They have to recognize that the world is very different. They have to be open-minded and they have to allow the space for their kids to operate.
And I think that is one of the essential characteristics of being an entrepreneur. You have to have
True.
an open mind.
Yes, correct. Agreed.
Okay. So, what will be your advice to the upcoming, I would not use the word teachers now, upcoming disruptors or the creators or the innovators who want to get into the field of education? What are the right criterias they should have? Is it the qualification that matters or is it the experience they bring in that matters?
I would probably say neither. Education, of course, I'm not trying to downplay the education. Education is important because it gives you launchpad, but it is not the one that is going to take you too far. After some time, your education is only as important. For example, I cannot go back and say that I graduated from IIT Chennai 30 years ago. It means nothing today. What have you done during these 30 years? Maybe the first year or the first 2, 3, 4 years, it mattered the most. After that, it really depends on what have you done with your degree. So the qualification is important, but only for a few years, maybe not beyond that. Experience definitely as you get older. But I think the most important aspect of a disruptor is to keep learning.
Okay, true.
Right? And as I said, in Gen Z's world, they use the word LOL, laughing out loud in social media. I have a different expansion of this. I said lifetime of learning.
Wow.
Right? I say people have to continuously learn. And you will learn only when you have a sense of curiosity.
True.
Right? For example, we are looking at these cameras in front of us now. Right? I don't have to disrupt the cameras. I just have to say, talk to the person, the cameraman, and say, what are your challenges with this camera? How can I make it better? I'm not necessarily disrupting it. I'm just making it better. Okay. Right? But I will not be able to ask him that question if I don't have a sense of curiosity to find out how the camera works. First, I have to understand how the camera works, then talk to people and understand what it is, does not do what they would have liked to do as the end user, and then fill the gap.
Okay.
Right? So, the learning would happen only when you have a sense of curiosity. And learning is an important aspect for everybody, including, and more so I think for teachers, because now the tools of the trade are changing, so as to speak, right? Now let's say artificial intelligence is here. How do teachers adopt and adapt to that artificial intelligence being in the classroom in your face? It is literally threatening your job in some ways as a teacher, right? But you can coexist with the newer tools and technologies and newer concepts of learning, and how do you embrace those and make the entire classroom environment much richer for the students?
Lovely. So generally always says in our conversation and in meetings that a teacher should not be a teacher of subject. A teacher is actually teaching students.
Correct.
And then we teach them for life.
Correct.
So if a mathematics teacher is a mathematician, if an economics teacher is an economist, and if a physics teacher is a physicist, the perspective of the class changes completely.
Correct.
So that way, from teacher, the role is now of an entrepreneur,
Correct.
a researcher,
Correct.
who has gone through different cycles of life,
Sure.
and they bring that value and learning into the classroom,
Correct.
allowing students to fail in a very controlled environment.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So that's what I think the teacher entrepreneurs are going to be in the future. And now, a really tough one for you.
Okay.
If students are the products that we as organizations, as teachers, as parents are trying to create for the future, what are the exams? Are they bugs or are they a beta test?
They are necessary evil. So the reason I say that is because exams are important to assess students' learning, but not for us to decide whether they are a bug or a beta test from that perspective, because I don't consider them to be pass or a fail. It should be an input to make things better.
Okay.
Right? Just like, let's say, a beta test, for example. Maybe it's more like a beta test when you're constantly testing people, not to find fault. It should not be a fault finding mission. It should be a fact finding mission. You assess how, because every student is going to be different. You are going to be different, I'm going to be different, sitting in the same class, maybe exactly all the environment that we were brought up in is exactly the same, but our learning abilities could be very different. Right? So the test should determine whether Chirag is ahead of Bhaskar, is Bhaskar ahead of Chirag. If so, so be it, accept it.
True.
Right? And then try to fill the gap, and so that one person who is in learning abilities is slightly lower. I don't believe anybody has anything less ability to learn. I just believe that each one of us have a different cycle in life. Right? Just the way every flower does not bloom at the same time in spring. They all have a cycle of their own. Same thing, I think every student has a life or has a cycle of their own. Some will bloom very early in age, in their life. Some will take a little more time to bloom. But ultimately, everybody will bloom.
Exactly.
To recognize the blooming cycle of each student by the teacher is very, very critical with these tests. So use the test as a stepping stone to assess the learning ability, and therefore tailor your content to the students so that they don't feel left behind. Right?
Exactly.
And when I was growing up, when I was in school, it was fairly common that students who were the front benchers were only two types of students. Either people who are very, very smart, or students who are not very tall. Those were the only two criteria. Right? And I was one of those people who made the first half of the classroom possible. So I was just always in the second half of the room. Right? But what I'm saying is so they get neglected right from the beginning. People sitting in the back, they never get the attention they deserve, because they are actually the ones who deserve more attention.
Correct.
Right? Because people sitting in the front, they are smart or smarter. They are going to pick up things and learn faster, but it is the people who are sitting in the backbenchers are the ones who need help. Right? I think the teacher needs to recognize that, the organization needs to recognize that, and then the test should be used to determine the learning abilities, and not to say, Bhaskar, you have failed, and Chirag, you have passed. I think that creates a massive inferiority complex in the kids, and they start to feel that, look, I'm not good enough.
Okay.
And we have to make them come out of that kind of a mindset. If I feel that I'm not good enough, I will never achieve anything in life.
So it is just an iteration to further improvise.
It should be used as an assessment tool to determine what gaps exist and fill that gap. So the first part is as important as the second part. Identifying where the gap exists, and then making a conscious effort to fill that gap. If you just identify the gap that, yeah, Bhaskar is a slow learner and not do anything about it, it doesn't help me. Right? So the teacher and the organization have to have that system and processes and tools in place to say, if a student is a slow learner, right? And some could be a fast learner. What do I do with them? Right? And I know Indus School has students who are categorized or who are way ahead of the class, and they are categorized in a separate class. Advanced subjects is, I think, what they do. When my son was in Indus, that's what he told me as well. And there are students who are slow learners, but they are not discarded. They are prepped up to say, hey, you can be in that group as well, and here is how we can help you. I think that's important. That's how the test should be used.
So please remember, exams are not a bug. They give us a chance to further improvise, and as Bhaskar said, it gives us an opportunity to bridge the gap and make sure that, if not 100%, but 99%, all the flowers bloom at the same time. It's an opportunity for the teachers, for the entrepreneurs.
Correct.
To make sure that happens.
Yes, agreed.
So thank you, Bhaskar, for this amazing conversation and this interesting time. And
my pleasure.
Thank you very much. And also, maybe we can now add that TiE and 10x Mysuru have joined hands.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to do some great things together.
And we can promise you one thing, at 10x, and as we are part of TiE, there will be less classes and more Launchpads.
Wonderful. Great to hear that. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. All right.